Sometimes powerful top-tier Pokemon get hard-countered by the most random Pokemon ever. A classic and famous example is of course the fact that Duxbun, a low-tier dog Pokemon made out of bread, is a hard counter to the literal best Pokemon in Gen 9 Ubers, Koraidon. Koraidon cannot touch Duxbun with anything, and is completely forced out by it. Now it's important for me to define here what a hard counter is exactly. A hard counter is a Pokemon that can safely switch in against anything that the enemy Pokemon is commonly going to run in competitive, and threaten to defeat them in a 1 vs 1 if they stay. The job of the hard counter is to stop the enemy Pokemon in their tracks and force them to exit the field. Now of course Pokemon is a game where there are a lot of options, and if you are a psychic that knows exactly what the enemy is running, there is no true hard counters because there's hidden power and such, which can be any type and therefore can be super effective against anything you want. There is also Terra Blast in Gen 9 and Terastallization, which means that you can even counter a hard counter if you have perfect information. But I don't want any smart Alex in my comments saying, well, what if you Terra Steel and use Iron Head with Koraidon? Then you would defeat Duxbun. Yes, very intelligent of you to say this. I'm talking about practical situations, folks. Duxbun against Koraidon is a good example of a hard counter, because it is immune to fire and a dragon and resistant to fighting and bug, which is all of Koraidon's common attacking types. Duxbun can reliably heal and sustain itself to continue countering Koraidon throughout the game, and it also threatens Koraidon with the lethal force of Play Rough, which does ×4 super effective damage. Yes, Koraidon learns the move Iron Head, but it never runs this in Gen 9 Ubers, because fire damage boosted by the sun is generally far better as an offensive option, even against fairy types. The only reason Koraidon would be using Iron Head is if it knew that the opponent had Duxbun. And if it knew that, it could cheat in all sorts of other ways and run perfect counters to everything the enemy does. The other reason Duxbun is a perfect example of a hard counter is because that's all it's good for. It's good because it destroys Koraidon specifically, and that's about it. If not for this, no one would use this in Gen 9 Ubers. It's not a good Pokemon otherwise, but it has this specific set of qualities to defeat Koraidon 99.99% of the time, and that gives it value. So today in this video I would like to talk about Pokemon like this, that exist purely to destroy the life of a specific opponent, and that's the reason they are used. One of the most humorous examples of a hard counter in Pokemon history is the case of Porygon, Generation 1. A pretty bad Pokemon on its own merits, a simple normal type with average stats, outclassed of course by the more elite normal types in the game like Chansey and Tauros. But Porygon's claim to fame in Gen 1 is that it specifically destroys Snorlax, who is a Pokemon so powerful that it's on every single OU team. You might be wondering what exactly about Porygon is good against Snorlax. And Gen 1 is a strange world where things like this are the unfortunate truth. You see, in Generation 1, normal type Pokemon are immune to being paralyzed by the move Body Slam. Body Slam usually has a paralysis chance attached to it, a very high 30% paralysis chance, but not against normal types. Porygon is a normal type, and therefore it can safely switch in against Snorlax and not worry about being paralyzed. This is the crux of what makes it good against Snorlax. The other thing is that it has Reflect, which is a different move in Gen 1. Reflect is a move that simply doubles the Pokemon's defense permanently until they exit the field. It's very different to the later Protect, changed in future games to be a temporary defense boosting move that applies to the whole team. This is just a double defense bonus to the Pokemon on the field currently that maintains until that Pokemon exits. So with Reflect up and an immunity to Body Slam's paralysis, Porygon can kind of just sit against Snorlax and they can't do anything against it. Porygon has Recover to safely heal. And the most humorous part of this hard counter Snorlax set is that it runs Tackle, a terrible move of course, used in the Route 1 grass by the famous Rattata. But Tackle is used here purely because it has a high PP of 56, meaning it can be clicked about 1,000,000 times, and stall out the enemy Snorlax if they choose to stay and play the 1v1. You will be able to click Tackle repeatedly, even outlasting the Snorlax as it rests up and even slowly dealing a little bit of damage to them, putting their life on a clock, bringing them closer to the grave. Now, certain Chansey sets can do exactly the same thing as this Paragon if they are running Reflect, since Chansey also is a normal type immune to Body Slam Paralysis. But Paragon serves to take the heat off of Chansey, basically, or whatever other Pokemon might be a Snorlax response. And when the Pokemon you are hard countering is on literally every single team in the format, I'd say your odds of success are pretty good. This strategy is not bad, folks, using the Paragon as the Snorlax answer to protect the rest of your team from the Snorlax, because Snorlax is a frightening Pokemon that can really tear apart teams, spreading paralysis and dishing out serious damage if you're not careful. The Noble Paragon simplifies the matchup considerably. The only threat to Paragon's person when against Snorlax is the threat of an Ice Beam freeze. Snorlax might run Ice Beam on some of its Amnesia sets, or perhaps sets that are just fishing for freezes, and this is the one thing that can end Paragon's career, and Gen 1 freeze is permanent, unless you are struck by a fire move that can inflict burn, which rarely happens. But other than that outlier scenario where they have to get lucky with a move that is a little bit less common on the Pokemon to begin with, Paragon is a hard counter to Snorlax. And it's very embarrassing for Snorlax. Snorlax took a real ego hit as a result of this, because even with all the power in the world, it could not defeat a simple digital duck. Very embarrassing for Snorlax, and a real humbling experience. Now here is a Pokemon that is actually ranked in the OU tier, purely for its ability to destroy the life of another Pokemon, and it was designed that way. That is, of course, Magneton. Magneton on the surface is not amazing. It's alright, it has an electric steel typing, which is probably better than just a mono-electric. It's got a high special attack stat, but there's nothing particularly great about it compared to other electric types. That is, of course, except for its amazing ability Magnet Pull, which is an ability that prevents steel types from switching out if you are on the field, pulling them in with magnetism and trapping them there with you. Magneton's entire job is to defeat Skarmory. That's pretty much it. Magneton switches in against Skarmory, prevents it from leaving, and then hits it with a super effective Thunderbolt to ruin its career. And Skarmory is ubiquitous enough in Gen 3 OU, common enough, that just being able to do this gives Magneton a prestigious OU ranking. Switching in against Skarmory is completely safe for the most part. Skarmory can't really do anything beyond just roar you out. In the worst case, which doesn't actually harm you, it just switches you out. Skarmory can make spikes or toxic, but you are of course immune to being poisoned. And the spikes are not a problem when you're going to follow up with a KO against the Skarmory, that's just fine. What's funny though is that Magneton actually needs to carry the Magnet item to achieve the reliable one-hit KO. Magnet is not a very good item, it just grants 1.1x power to electric type moves in Gen 3. But without this item, the roll to one-hit KO Skarmory is actually pretty bad because Skarmory runs special defense in Gen 3. So this Magnet gives you that tiny little bit of power boost to improve the roll up to 70+%, which is very important. Now I suppose it might not be exactly accurate to call this a hard counter for one funny reason, and that is that Skarmory can actually run a set of its own as a lure for Magneton that will defeat it. And that is the famous YOLO Skarm, as it's called, which carries the move Hidden Power Ground. In Gen 3, a ground type Hidden Power is a physical attack and will deal ×4 super effective damage to Magneton. If Skarmory has max attack investment and max speed to outrun the Magneton, this will KO. And you will completely turn the tables against what is supposed to be your hard counter. Now, of course, this Hidden Power Ground Skarmory set is a bit of a meme. Running Hidden Power Ground on Skarmory is only good for this specific context, and because you're running max attack, you're taking your EVs away from the valuable bulk that makes you so much more effective in other matchups. So you're running a far worse Skarmory just to not die, but the set is somewhat viable. It's on the fringe of viability, I would say, because it is valuable to not die to Magneton and to KO it back. But on the flip side, there is a Magneton set that can sacrifice speed for enough defense to live this Hidden Power Ground. And that Magneton set would be a hard counter, because even if the enemy is running a YOLO Skarm, the YOLO Skarm does not even earn the KO. they would have to preemptively hidden power ground you on the way in, which they would never do without perfect information. Since Gen 3 has no team preview, they would have to psychically guess that you have a Magneton, and also presume that you're running a Magneton with defense EVs, because most Magnetons would die to the hidden power ground anyway, meaning there's no risk involved in just making a spike or something and then attacking the Magneton as it switches in. How funny that these Pokemon keep evolving to one-up each other. Now, Magneton is also used to trap Forretress in Gen 3, but I would not call Magneton a hard counter against Forretress, because Forretress can live a hidden power fire much of the time. The roll is not that good to one-hit KO with hidden power fire. And Forretress also learns the move Earthquake, which one-hit KOs Magneton, I think, all of the time. I think it's too powerful and Magneton cannot survive that. Magneton is very good against Forretress most of the time, but you do need to do a little bit of chip damage to actually get the one hit, and Forretress also has the Earthquake, which they sometimes throw out preemptively as an insurance play to catch a potential Magneton trap. The Forretress is much sturdier against Magneton than Skarmory is. It's one of its advantages, actually. Magneton, of course, received an evolution in the next game of Gen 4, Magnezone, who is a much more effective Pokemon at this role. It has the same ability Magnet Pull, the same typing, but superior stats with higher defense and special attack. Magnezone is great against Skarmory in Gen 4, no longer worried about any sort of ground coverage at all, and a much more reliable trapper against it actually. And in Gen 5 onwards, Magnezone is excellent against the Pokemon Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn is the new champion of the Steel type from Gen 5 onwards, and one of the most powerful Pokemon in the whole series. And Magnezone ruins its life completely by switching in, trapping it, and defeating it with hidden power fire. Now, Ferrothorn can learn the move Bulldoze, which is ground type coverage to hit Magnezone, but it only has 60 power and is not actually going to assist it in this 1v1. Ferrothorn will perish. And plus, that would be a complete waste of a move slot in other matchups. Now, in Gen 3 OU, Tyranitar is a tough Pokemon to hard counter due to its set variety. Tyranitar can be a physical attacker, a boost sweeper, a wall breaker, a choice band user, or a special attacker with mixed sets, or a pursuit trapper, a substitute focus punch attacker with mixed or physical sets. It can even spread paralysis with Thunder Wave, it can phase you out with Roar. Some sets run Taunt and Toxic as a bit of a stall breaker. Tyranitar is so diverse that it's difficult for one Pokemon to counter every possible Tyranitar set. Swampert is the most popular Tyranitar check in Gen 3, due to it being excellent against the physical attacking Tyranitar sets, but against the special attacking ones, it is not a reliable answer, as they carry Hidden Power Grass, which hits Swampert at times for super effective damage. Flygon is also great against the physical sets, but bad against the mixed sets that carry Ice Beam. So how can you hard counter something that defeats its usual responses depending on the set? Well, the closest thing to a hard counter against Tyranitar that Gen 3 OU has would probably be Thick Fat Hariyama. Thick Fat Hariyama is probably the safest single switch in to Tyranitar in the game. Hariyama is a mono fighting type, meaning it resists Rock Slide, which is the most important move to resist when switching in against Tyranitar, because it's its highest damage physical stab move that also has a flinch chance. Hariyama also resists Dark, meaning it can switch in safely against Crunch, which is common on mixed and pursuit trapping sets. Crunch could deal high damage with stab to Pokemon like Swampert and Flygon, but Hariyama can also resist that. With Thick Fat, you also have reduced damage from fire and ice type moves, so a big Fire Blast, which is a pretty good high power special attack, would also be shrugged off by Hariyama, and so would Ice Beam. Thick Fat Hariyama with special defense investment is probably the safest switch into Tyranitar there is, and can respond to both physical and special sets well, plus threaten a super effective ×4 Brick Break to force Tyranitar out of the field. But even this set is not 100% foolproof, unfortunately. I can't call this a hard counter exactly, even though I'm talking about it in the video, because Tyranitar has Focus Punch, a high power move that can hit switch-ins for big neutral damage. Yes, Hariyama resists Rock, Dark, and fire effectively, but it's still gonna get punched in the head by Focus Punch and take over half of its HP, especially if the Focus Punch is Choice Band boosted. This goes to show that some Pokemon are difficult to truly hard counter. That's not necessarily a bad thing either, in my opinion, and this tends to happen against particularly versatile Pokemon that can run multiple different viable sets. But Hariyama is still viewed as a very safe, near hard counter to many different Tyranitar sets, and a good way to scout the enemy Tyranitar to figure out what exactly it's using, without taking too much punishment. Now how about Gengar? Can you truly hard counter a Pokemon as diverse as Gengar in Gen 3 with all of its options? The move Will-O-Wisp to burn switch-ins, various different special coverage, the ability to taunt opponents, even access to Focus Punch. The most common way to defeat Gengar is with Pursuit Tyranitar, of course, Pursuit being a move that attacks the enemy Pokemon as they switch out and gets double power if it's doing so. Most of the time, Pursuit Tyranitar will do the trick, but sometimes Gengar can actually triumph against Pursuit Tyranitar. With Giga Drain or Hidden Power Grass, you can sometimes do too much damage to Pursuit Tyranitar for them to eliminate you. Giga Drain especially can heal your Gengar, and Tyranitar clicking Pursuit while the Gengar is in deals too little damage to defeat them. So it becomes a 50-50 mind game of whether you crunch or Pursuit, which enhances the chance that Gengar will live. Gengar can also Focus Punch incoming Tyranitar. Gengar does not have a very good attack stat, but the high power of Focus Punch and the times for super effective damage can put Tyranitar in a real world of hurt and lead to a follow-up KO with a simple grass-type maneuver. Sometimes even a Thunderbolt will finish off Tyranitar in this context. There is also Houndoom, an alternative Pursuit Trapper that is good against Gengar, and Houndoom has the advantage of burn immunity, so it's not worried about Will-O-Wisp. Also not worried about Giga Drain or Hidden Power Grass due to grass resistance. And this Pokemon has a higher special attack stat too. But Houndoom, being a little bit frailer than Tyranitar, not able to chip heal in the sand, can sometimes just get eliminated by a simple couple of Thunderbolts, worn down by spikes and sand, and actually be pretty unreliable at defeating Gengar and eliminating it with Pursuit. But there is one Pursuit Trapper that stands tall among the rest as the most reliable against Gengar, the most no-nonsense of all the Pursuit Trappers, and that is Umbreon. Umbreon is a simple Mono-Dark type with incredible defensive stats. It's got great HP, base 95, 110 defense, 130 special defense, so it is extremely sturdy against Gengar. It will take near nothing from its special attacks, and even if they predict you with a Focus Punch, Umbreon can shrug it off. Yes, it is weak to fighting, but Gengar's Focus Punch is weak. Umbreon has great natural defense. It's only going to do about 30%, which is not enough. Umbreon even has the reliable healing of Wish and Protect. It of course has Pursuit. And the other thing that makes Umbreon so excellent against Gengar is its ability Synchronize. Synchronize is an ability where if you get burned, poisoned, or paralyzed, your opponent will have that status mirrored to them. So if Gengar tries to Will-O-Wisp Umbreon, they will burn themselves, which is far worse for Gengar. Gengar does not want to take chip damage. It's very bad for Gengar to do that. And Umbreon will gladly stomach the burn if it means that Gengar is also burned. This is an even exchange, but worse for them. So Umbreon can safely switch in against absolutely anything Gengar can possibly do. Unless it's like Choice Band Focus Punch. But even that, you survive, and now you know that they're the worst Gengar ever, and are not even a threat to you. So that's fine. Plus, that's an incredibly mimetic set that is not very good. Against all normal Gengars, Umbreon is insanely safe, no matter what they do. All coverage is shrugged off, even the worst of it being Focus Punch is shrugged off. Even being burned is no problem. Your Pursuit is lower damage, and that's where the risk lies. You can't exactly one-hit them with Pursuit much of the time, but Umbreon can continuously switch in against the Gengar throughout the game and not be threatened at all, and that is really valuable, because Gengar is famously difficult to switch in against. Most Pokemon do not want to take a burn, they are frightened of Gengar possibly exploding, they are frightened of Gengar taunting them, hitting them with unforeseen coverage. Umbreon doesn't care about any of that. Umbreon is Gengar's worst nightmare in Generation 3. One of the truest hard counters that I'm aware of in competitive is Armaldo against Snorlax in Gen 3 OU. Armaldo completely destroys Snorlax in every single context. I don't think Snorlax has anything to hit Armaldo with that is meaningful. Armaldo is uniquely equipped to destroy Snorlax's life. It is a rock bug type, usually not the most amazing typing ever, but against Snorlax, it is outstanding. Rock, of course, offers a normal resistance, blocking Snorlax's big stab type, but the complementary bug typing means that Armaldo is neutral to Earthquake and neutral to Focus Punch, which are common coverage options on Snorlax. So with defense investment, Armaldo has nothing to worry about in the face of Snorlax. Armaldo can utilize the move Harden to match a Snorlax's cursed boosts if they are using Curse, meaning it completely cancels out the damage that Snorlax might achieve through boosting up. Plus, Armaldo has the ability Battle Armor, meaning it is immune to critical hits. Usually, if a Pokemon gets a critical hit, it ignores all defensive boosts, but since Armaldo cannot be crit, that's not a problem. Armaldo will never have its defensive boosts invalidated by a crit. Armaldo gets Knockoff, which destroys Snorlax and removes its leftovers healing. Armaldo can easily 1v1 Snorlax with Seismic Toss and Rest. It will either completely stall the Snorlax out, or just beat it slowly with incremental damage. The most damage Snorlax can even do to Armaldo is with Rock Slide, which is actually super effective, but if Armaldo has full defense, it's only dealing a maximum of 31%. So that's not even a problem. Armaldo also chip heals in the sand while Snorlax does not, another big advantage for it in 1v1s. Even if Snorlax were to run Toxic, Armaldo can simply rest to cure the status and be completely safe in that scenario too. And one of my absolute favorite hard counters in Gen 3 is Mantine. Mantine completely ruins the life of a very popular Gen 3 Pokemon, Suicune, a Pokemon that many despise for its powerful calm mindsets and its pressure stalling, but Mantine is Suicune's worst nightmare. Mantine is a water flying type Pokemon with the ability Water Absorb, granting a complete immunity to water type attacks, plus it heals if struck by one. This is the big reason it's so great against Suicune, completely immune to its primary attacking type. Some Suicune sets in fact only run water type attacks, meaning Mantine completely stonewalls these sets. Now Mantine is not the only Pokemon with Water Absorb in the game, there's Vaporeon and Quagsire, but these sets are vulnerable to the occasional coverage of HP Grass on offensive Suicune sets. An offensive Suicune with special attack investment, a Calm Mind boost, and HP Grass will of course destroy Quagsire in particular, but also really threaten Vaporeon. Mantine, however, is neutral to Grass due to its Water Flying typing. And Mantine can also shrug off Ice Beam, Suicune's other popular coverage option, since it's neutral to that as well. Mantine has one of the best special defense stats in the game with base 140, so neutral, non-stab boosted attacks like Ice Beam and HP Grass will be completely shrugged off. The only risk for Mantine is getting frozen by Ice Beam, but even that is not a huge problem because Suicune would have to Calm Mind so much to the point where it could actually threaten Mantine, and Mantine is so likely to just thaw out by then and then haze all the boosts away. So even that would take a serious outlier scenario for Suicune to be able to win. I suppose Suicune could also run HP Electric, which would hit Mantine for super effective damage, but that's insanely uncommon. I don't think I've ever even seen that before. And one final example here from Gen 3, folks. Forgive me for talking so much about Gen 3. It's the meta I know the most about. The final example here is one of the most famous, Porygon 2. The original Porygon was a hard counter to Snorlax back at Gen 1, and the sequel, Porygon 2, is also hard countering people. Porygon 2 has improved stats over the original, decent stats for the time, and a good move pool with options like Recover, Thunder Wave, and good special attacks like Ice Beam and Thunderbolt. But Porygon 2's most noteworthy trait is its ability Trace, which is actually my favorite ability design in the game. Trace will copy the enemy's ability on switch-in, and this has so many fun applications. You can copy Natural Cure from Blissey to heal your status, you can copy Volt Absorb from Jolteon to be immune to their Thunderbolt, copy Levitate to be immune to ground moves, etc. But the big one is that you can copy Arena Trap from Dugtrio, which actually traps the enemy Dugtrio in with you. You use their own trapping ability against them. And I would absolutely describe Porygon 2 as the hard counter to Dugtrio, because it has the defense to stomach all of Dugtrio's attacks, and it traps Dugtrio, preventing them from exiting the field, giving Dugtrio a taste of its own medicine for once, and threatening them with a super effective Ice Beam. Porygon 2 can also just spam Recover in the face of Dugtrio, stalling out all of its Earthquakes, which is a common line. Since Ice Beam does not have a guaranteed one-hit KO, this is actually the safest thing to do. The only way Porygon 2 can lose to Dugtrio is if it gets crit twice in a row while doing this Recover spam, which is extremely unlikely, although it has happened to me before, and I consider that to be nonsense. It is an extremely unlikely event, and I wouldn't consider this to erase the hard counter status, because that is an extreme outlier. Porygon 2 can be used to support allies that hate Dugtrio, like Raikou, who is slower than Dugtrio and gets eliminated in one hit by Earthquake. With Porygon 2 on your team, Raikou becomes so much better. So does Breloom and Heracross, who also get eliminated by Dugtrio, Metagross, Jirachi, Tyranitar. All these Pokemon that hate Dugtrio love Porygon 2 as a teammate, because of its ability to hard counter the Mole Trio. In the Generation 5 OU metagame, there is a Pokemon ranked in the OU tier purely for its ability to hard counter not one top threat, but 3 different top threats. And that is Celebi. Celebi would not really be that great otherwise, but due to its unique qualities that destroy 3 particular Pokemon, it is considered a good member of Gen 5 OU. The first noteworthy Pokemon that Celebi hard counters is Tentacruel. Tentacruel is a very common Pokemon in Gen 5 OU due to its powerful ability Rain Dish, which grants extra chip healing in the rain. This allows Tentacruel to achieve ludicrous amounts of healing on rain teams, which are very good alongside Politoed with Drizzle. Tentacruel is also a rapid spinner, meaning it can remove hazards from the field, and this is extremely important utility. Tentacruel can spread Scald, generally is difficult to defeat due to its constant chip healing, and is just a great Pokemon in this format. Celebi, though, kind of destroys Tentacruel. It's perfect against Tentacruel. The most obvious reason, it resists water. Celebi is a grass type which resists water. But it's not just any water resist. Celebi also has natural cure, meaning it is able to cure status on switch out. This is actually very important because Tentacruel relies on Scald to inflict burn. Even if you resist water, you're not safe against Scald because the burn will be permanent and impact you for the rest of the game, especially if you're a physical attacker. But Celebi doesn't really care about getting burned since it can just switch out and cure the burn. Celebi has recovery to easily shrug off any burn damage or Scald damage. And Celebi can directly threaten Tentacruel with Psychic as well, which is super effective against poison. Celebi also has access to Stealth Rock, which is crucial. Celebi can set Stealth Rock, and if Tentacruel tries to Rapid Spin, they're going to take a massive Psychic and almost die, so it's often not worth it. The ability to reliably set a hazard against a Rapid Spinner is incredibly powerful. This is another reason Celebi is so great. Celebi can also do Substitute in the face of Tentacruel and Baton Pass out to a teammate for some momentum, since Tentacruel cannot really achieve much in the face of Celebi. Another option that Tentacruel might use is Toxic to attack its switch-ins, but Celebi doesn't mind that, of course, as well, due to natural cure. And Tentacruel in Gen 5 also never really runs poison-type attacks. They're not that good, due to the common steel types that are just completely immune. Scald is going to be your general attack that you're going to use, and if you use any sort of poison move, it would be Toxic to just directly poison something switching in, like a Gastrodon, for example. You wouldn't really want Sludge Wave or Sludge Bomb, so Celebi is not under fire from that, and just destroys Tentacruel completely, ruining all of its advantages and threatening it directly, and even achieving value against it. Another popular Pokemon that Celebi destroys is Keldeo. Keldeo is one of the top Pokemon of Gen 5 OU, a truly central metagame force. Often used on rain teams for its powerful water-type stab damage, but also just used on any old team, because it's just that good in general. Keldeo relies on its great water-fighting stab combination, especially its move Secret Sword, which is a fighting-type special attack that hits the enemy based on their defense stat, sort of allowing for a kind of mixed coverage. Celebi crucially resists both water and fighting, making it an amazing switch-in against Keldeo. Celebi also directly threatens Keldeo with a super effective Psychic, and can recover to shrug off damage. If Keldeo is carrying Scald or Toxic, which it sometimes does, Celebi has natural cure to shrug those off, and cure the status at any time. Now, Keldeo can sometimes run super effective coverage that hits Celebi, like Icy Wind, that's its only ice coverage. But even a choice specs boosted Icy Wind will not do enough to Celebi. Celebi can switch in, and even in the worst case scenario, it's not taken that much, it can easily recover to shrug it off, and Keldeo is still losing this 1v1 by quite a significant margin. Keldeo sometimes runs Hidden Power Ghost as well to hit targets like Latios and Jellicent. This would also hit Celebi super effectively, but that also doesn't do enough to a specially defensive invested Celebi, so that won't work either. Celebi kind of destroys Keldeo, which is a huge deal in this format, where Keldeo is one of the top Pokemon. And Celebi also destroys Breloom. Breloom is common in Gen 5 OU, even though Spore is not legal to use. Sleep moves are banned, but Breloom is still good due to its powerful ability Poison Heal, which grants effective status immunity and incredible chip healing. Breloom is a pretty good Swords Dance sweeper with options like Facade and Sub-Focus Punch and Seed Bomb. And Breloom's other ability, Technician, is also great for wall-breaking sets with Mach Punch or Bullet Seed. Celebi, of course, resists Grass and Fighting. It's not worried about being put to sleep. And Psychic hits the Breloom super effectively. Breloom can't really touch Celebi with anything beyond perhaps Swords Dance Facade for neutral damage, but even that is not going to be enough damage to power through Celebi. Celebi's good natural bulk, high HP from investment, and solid natural defense will easily thwart Breloom's attempts to power through. Focus Punch, of course, not a problem when you resist the damage. And Breloom's other option of Stun Spore, also no problem when you have Natural Cure. I think it's very impressive that Celebi completely destroys these three top Pokemon. They don't really have anything to do against Celebi at all. And Celebi can completely abuse them for setup, momentum, whatever. I actually really love using Celebi in Gen 5 OU because of this. It feels so reliable and strong against these really common three Pokemon that you see almost all the time in this format. And finally, a humorous example of a hard counter from the most recent generation, Gen 9, is Vileplume. Vileplume is a hard counter to the very common top metagame threat in Gen 9 OU, Ogerpon Wellspring. Isn't that absolutely insane? Ogerpon Wellspring is incredible, with its powerful Stab Ivy Cudgel, incredible speed and damage output, great physical move pool, powerful Swords Dance sweeping sets, just one of the top Pokemon in the format. And yet it can't do anything to a simple, physically defensive Vileplume, who is an NU ranked Pokemon who's generally not very good. Vileplume is just a grass poison type, with very average stats that has never been amazing. But its bulk is just good enough with investment, and all of its traits are just lined up well enough to defeat Ogerpon Wellspring. It of course resists both water and grass type attacks, and in fact at times 4 resists grass, which is huge. It also resists Fairy, which is the other coverage type Ogerpon Wellspring sometimes uses, with Play Rough. It will lose its item from knockoff, which is bad, but so will pretty much everything. And it can take the damage, at least. And Vileplume has access to the amazing move Strength's Sap. This is the big reason to use Vileplume in particular, because this is an amazing move that not a lot of Pokemon get. Strength Sap is a healing move that first lowers the enemy's attack stat by 1, and then heals you based on how high their attack stat is, sometimes even fully healing you. So against Ogerpon Wellspring, a strong physical attacker, Vileplume will absolutely get full healed and lower their attack stat too, reducing their damage output. Vileplume also has super effective Sludge Wave to directly threaten the Ogerpon Wellspring. So with this combination of great typing against Ogerpon Wellspring, the Strength Sap, which lowers its attack and means you can easily fully heal yourself, even at the worst of times, and sort of counteract Sword Dance as well, plus the super effective damage against it means that Vileplume just absolutely destroys Ogerpon Wellspring, which is quite funny, I think. Now, fair warning, I don't think this is actually that good or practical in Gen 9 OU. You're probably better off running Pecharunt or something, even though that can get knocked off. It's more reliable in other matchups. But I believe Vileplume has been used on Gen 9 OU teams before in very niche circumstances due to a stall team or something really needing help against Ogerpon Wellspring in particular. Needing so much help that you need a absolute hard counter like Vileplume on the team to patch up the matchup. So in that context, Vileplume did the trick. There are, of course, many more examples of niche hard counters to things that I have not mentioned in this video. Pokemon is a game with vast options available, and if something is problematic enough, players will dig even down into the lower tiers to find something with a specific set of traits to defeat it. It may not always be good enough to actually work, but sometimes miracles can happen, and a little dog like Duck's Bun can have its day, when all the world thought it was useless. The moral of the story, folks, is that every dog has its day. All of them. You name a dog, you think of any dog, and one day they will have their day. It may not have happened yet, but it will happen. And you can mark my words on that. You can mark my words. Thank you for watching, folks. Who is your favorite Manta Ray themed Pokemon from this video? Mine would be Mantine. What about you? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.